Please bow your heads and let's pray together. Lord God, we gather before you and thank you for the opportunity to hear from individuals who are committed to making this community better, and as they share insight and information about ways in which we can come alongside our youth and our children and improve outcomes in their lives, we ask for your grace and your mercy and your Holy Spirit to do this work in and through us. May we be instruments in your hands to lift up this community for more flourishing and thriving and better health, Lord. We thank you for everyone who's committed to the work of assisting and coming alongside our youth and helping them. We pray for their work in our community and ask your blessing upon them. In your name we pray. Amen.
Madam Mayor, Libby Geyer and Rick Youngblood, I understand you guys are supposed to come up and do your part. You can tell we've coordinated this. We spent hours running through dry runs this morning. Be patient.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Mayor?
Well, good morning and welcome. It is great to see everybody this morning. You know, today is a great day. It's not the actual beginning, but it is a beginning, and every new day is a new beginning, isn't it? And as I look across the people in this room, you're the people in our community that create new beginnings, and for our kids. And so when we talk about 2C Kids Succeed, we've had, I think, months of discussion, and it's been mulling around in G. Munchie's head for some time. And, you know, it never ceases to amaze me when I think about the power of one. And there's a whole bunch of those sitting out here. But I do want to acknowledge the power of one in Jean, because she's been working and has a vision, has a passion for kids. And it takes all of us coming together. We've heard that saying, it takes a village to raise a child. And the reality is, it takes all of us making a difference. But for the city of Nampa, our goal is to be a safe and healthy community where the people prosper. But how does that happen? Right? You know what? It really begins in our kids. And they are the future of our community. They're the future of this county. So while we are in Nampa this morning, and I appreciate you being here, and I appreciate the opportunity to get to welcome you, what we're working on is not about us. It's about we, and it's about Canyon County. It's about coming together as a county to make a difference in the future leaders and our kids. And I appreciate Dr. Patterson. I appreciate the conversation that we're going to have today about how to make a difference in our kids. And so I just want to say welcome, thank you to everyone that is here that's making a difference, and our esteemed panel members. It's going to be an excellent program and discussion. So I look forward to it, and thank you.
Well, on behalf of Mayor Nancolas, he happens to be in Washington, D.C. today with the National League of Cities, so it's not able to be here. But I'm Debbie Geyer. I'm the city clerk for the city of Caldwell, and I am fortunate to be able to head what we call the Youth Master Plan Committee. It's amazing to me as I look back at the years that I've been with the city of Caldwell. Nearly 20 years ago, we adopted what's called the Youth and Family Platform. And from that, there has been an entourage of different programs that we have instigated that's all about youth and family, because it is so important to us that our community has such strong values with youth and family. We look forward to the partnership that we can have with this potential program and the initiative that is widespread over Canyon County. We look forward to what that will entail for our community as well as the betterment for all of Canyon County. So thank you for the opportunity to be here today, and we look forward to what this is going to bring us.
I too would like to thank all of you for being here this morning. Rick Youngblood, local banker, state representative of this district, actually 12, and my seatmate is here, Representative Ann Durst. I appreciate you being here this morning as well. Also have the privilege of sitting on the community board for St. Luke's. Yesterday, a lot of your Canyon County legislators met with the school superintendents for Canyon County. One of the things that we heard loud and clear was the trauma within the schools. You take it, K through 12, all the grades. It is not the responsibility of our teachers today to raise our children, our young people. That's family values. I'll talk more about that, I think, in our closing when we're done, but I'm excited about the opportunity to discuss openly about the value of families, growing the values of our families, and taking care of our children. Thank you for being here this morning.
Thank you for being here. I'm Jean Mechie with St. Luke's, and I co-chair the Mayor's Healthy Impact Nampa Coalition through the Mayor's Office. And unfortunately, my co-chair, Sherry Ainsworth from St. Alphonsus, was unable to attend today. But we've been asked to link some coalition work happening in both Nampa and Caldwell into what you're going to hear today. And this is a study in resilience. You're going to hear a lot about resilience today. I got up this morning and all my slide decks were gone. So we're going to navigate as best we can. But high resilience scores allow us to bounce forward from adversity. So please be patient if some things are missing. We have to be challenged to be effective. So I'm going to let Jackie Amendi and Jordan Seward introduce themselves. They co-chair the Caldwell Health Coalition.
My name is Jackie Amendi. I am with University of Idaho Extension, and I'm one of the co-facilitators of the Caldwell Health Coalition.
And I am Jordan Seward, and I am one of the health educators at Southwest District Health.
The social determinants of health are probably things that most of you have heard about, but really what it boils down to are those are influences of our health based on where we live, learn, work, play, and pray. So where we live can have significant impact not only on how well we live, but how long we live. I live in South Nampa, and I did a little data analysis, and where I live in South Nampa versus where Central Elementary is, kind of anchored in our downtown, there's a 9.5-year discrepancy in life expectancy. When you think about that, that's 4 miles apart. I will walk downtown or ride my bike, so within 4 miles in our own community, people live 9.5 years fewer. And really, it's all based on primarily things that are preventable. So we looked at data from healthy conditions assessments for both of our communities, as well as being recipients of Robert Wood Johnson Foundation Invest Health Grant, and then also Blue Cross of Idaho Foundation for Health Transformation Grant. All the data confirm what we already suspect, that where we live, work, learn, play, and pray impact how well we live and how long we live. So with the Healthy Impact Nampa Coalition, the themes that really emerged were access to healthy foods, affordable housing, and homelessness. So really we looked at the data and it showed that we have a housing spectrum issue. So not just people experiencing homelessness, but people who don't have the ability to get into a rental because the market is really good right now. We all know that. But with that, it's also keeping people out of rental market and then also out of being able to buy and purchase a home. Transportation, we have challenges with people being able to access grocery stores, places that they need to for medical appointments. But what we have found is with transportation, people say, well, it doesn't get used. But when we went out and did some really ground sleuthing on that, people said it took them 4 hours if they rode the bus to go from home to the grocery store and back. I don't know how many of you have 4 hours to try to go to the store, but it doesn't really work well for people. So that's a challenge as well. Then early childhood supports. I think Representative Youngblood hit on that. Our kids need to have stable, nurturing, safe environments from, well, really in utero all the way through school, and it really is predictive of how well they achieve. Then crisis trauma and family degradation, that came up often. People saying we have a lot of grandparents raising their grandkids, and that created challenges. They didn't, I didn't expect at 70 to be putting a 5-year-old on a bus to school. So it's really shifted the way that people are having to re-enter parenting as grandparents, and then also just a lot of broken homes. So current efforts that are underway, there's a strategic plan being developed. The grocery store shuttle that St. Alphonsus has now pulled in under Meals on Wheels runs every Saturday to provide access to Winco and Walmart for people in North Nampa. The Traveling Table Mobile Food Pantry, which is a partnership with the school district, Treasure Valley Leadership Academy. Those kids are amazing. It actually is happening today, right after this. And that's also in North Nampa, and it sets up first at Lakeview Church of the Nazarene, then moves down to the Housing Authority, where Andy is, and serve about 270 people in a 4-hour time frame with food. And then also Breaking Chains Academy, and you'll hear from Luis in a while. His students get to benefit from that as well. And then recently, with an incredible donation from the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, there was the ability to put a permanent food pantry at Good News Church on the north side, right up by Lakeview Park. So that's going to shift access to emergency food. But when Paul's closed, it really created a gap for people living on the north side for access to healthy food. So what you're going to hear about today from our speakers, hopefully be thinking about some of the themes that emerged, and you'll hear some similarities in Caldwell. And then how do we come back and really look at how we really lift these areas to see kids succeed.
All right, and I'll be really quick for the Caldwell Health Coalition, but we actually began efforts for the Caldwell Health Coalition in April of 2018. Currently, we are now meeting monthly as of November 2018, so just over a year. We've been meeting monthly on the second Wednesday of the month from 3 to 5 p.m. if anyone's interested. We're always looking for new members. But what we have done and what Jean has said is that we really looked at needs assessments that have already been done by multiple organizations within Caldwell. And we've looked at statistics and data to really come up with our 6 pillars of health that you see up here. This is what we look at for the Caldwell Health Coalition. Access to health care, improving food access, addressing mental health, housing options, problematic micro-neighborhoods, and then built environment, all with a base layer of whatever we do, we want to make sure it's equitable opportunity for all. And so addressing mental health is obviously what we're going to be talking about a little bit with today with trauma. And when it comes to this, what we've seen with data is that we really need to be looking at root causes for addressing mental health and swimming upstream approach and looking at those root causes. And ultimately, ideally, we'd look at a resilient community as being our base goal for this type of work. And so how can we build resilient youth? And right now, within the Caldwell Health Coalition, since we are a little bit more new, we are looking a little bit more at learning before we do. And so we're doing a lot of learning in this area and moving things forward within maybe some other different pillars right now. But we really are learning for mental health, and we're excited to be here and to share this with you. So if you ever have any questions on the Caldwell Health Coalition, please reach out to me, Jackie Mendy, or Jordan Seward. We'd be happy to get you information of what we're doing or to invite you. You're welcome. You're all welcome to come. So thank you for letting us have some time to speak today.
And now I'd like to welcome Janelle Stoffer to the stage. Janelle is a former Nampa School Board trustee, and she's also a licensed counselor and has a resilience training program now. And she's going to talk to you a little bit about some questionnaires that are on your table, and then we'll do some tone setting with a quick video.
Thank you, and thank you everyone for joining us in solidarity for Camden County kids. I can't think of a better reason to come together. In front of you, we've placed throughout your table 2 screeners. One's called the Adverse Childhood Experiences Scale, or ACEs, and one's a resiliency screener. If you look at the Adverse Childhood Experiences Scale, you'll find 10 questions that help us depict how many ACEs a kid has. So there's 10 questions that show 10 areas of adversity. And there's certainly more than 10 areas of adversity, but this is what we're using nationwide to predict the number of ACEs. And what we know is that the number of ACEs matters. And you'll learn more about that in this discussion today. But I want to kind of draw your awareness as you're looking at it to yourself. What we're talking about today is a vulnerable matter. And none of us, no one even in this room is immune from adversity. So as you look at this screener, you might find yourself on there, your kids, your neighbors, someone you sit next to at church, and you might notice a little bit of stress. If that's true today, I just welcome you to join me right now in taking a deep breath and maybe even connecting to the person next to you So go ahead and just take a second and do that. Deep breath. And here's why we do that. We need to address this issue with a calm nervous system. And that leaves us in an open and receptive state, which allows us to come up with solutions and commitments and compassion, which then allows us to address the second screening tool, which is the resiliency screening tool. What we know about the number on this screening tool is that the higher number a kid has on this tool predicts better outcomes in their ability to face adversity and respond better in this world. And that's our job here today, is to make sure the kids in Canyon County have the highest score possible on this resiliency screener. I think I'm supposed to introduce a video now. Isn't that true? Okay, so I'm going to introduce this video that kind of sets the tone and for what we're doing. The next one.
You may have to minimize.
Okay. I want to also take this opportunity while Jean's getting this to introduce you to some experts in the field of adversity here in Canyon County. We have some specialists who work in treatment of trauma, and I'd ask them to stand up so that we can see you. People from the Family Justice Center, yes. So we're here today to be a support to you as experts in this field, to offer you support if you have questions, and also just be a warm presence as we talk about some really hard things. So please reach out to us if you need us.
When I was a kid, I used to think, if I could just grow up, if I could just get through, I could leave all this behind. But that's not how it works. Everything that happened is still part of me. But there's hope. I learned how to heal from toxic stress and make sure the cycle ends with me.
Learn more about toxic stress and how you can stop it at stresshealth.org.
Dr. Patterson said, another big breath so that we can stay open and receptive when we talk about this hard stuff. It's my honor to introduce another expert, Roger Sherman. Roger Sherman is the executive director of the Idaho Children's Trust Fund, which has been directed by the governor to be the lead agency for prevention of child abuse and neglect. The Idaho Children's Trust Fund is also the state affiliate for Prevent Child Abuse America. So help me welcome Roger Sherman.
Good morning. Really great to see everybody out here. I am an expert only in the sense that I've done this for a while, but there's a lot of people in this room who have an incredible amount of expertise, and I hope what I can share is at least a part of what I think is an evolving understanding of how we can change our communities, change the lives of children, make a big difference, so that, like in the small film, while you may be carrying some of that baggage with you throughout life, you start to get rid of it little by little in order to, change the future for the kids that you then raise. Let's see if nope, that's not it. Whew, all right. So when you think about abuse and neglect, you probably picture something like this or like this, but probably not necessarily this, which is, that failing grades in school, other things that, impact your life in different ways than you might have expected. When you think about domestic violence, again, you might think about something of this, but maybe not this, maybe not chronic health diseases like chronic health conditions like asthma or diabetes or the number one killer in the United States, heart disease. But what the Adverse Childhood Experiences Study, the paper that you have on or the quiz that you have on your desk or on your table, tells us that those traumatic events in children's lives impact their health, their behavior, many of the things that we might say, oh, that kid is a bad kid, but that kid is carrying a big burden. And that kid is dealing with toxic stress that is affecting the way in which they act. And one of the big takeaways in terms of ACEs is this idea that, it's not about what's wrong with me or you or anybody else or the kids in our lives, but what's happened to them? What are the things that, affect them? The Centers for Disease Control recently came out with a statement that said at least 5 of the top 10 causes of death can be associated with ACEs. Some people say 7, some people say 8, so depending, but these are how many of you have heard of ACEs prior to today? Okay, great. So this is a group that doesn't need a ton of this stuff, but we're going to go through it. But as you see, the major focus are on abuse, neglect, and household dysfunction, and we talk about serious household dysfunction when we talk about that. This is something called ACE Pyramid, which just gives you a sense of, Gene said 9.5 years difference between North Nampa and South Nampa, and just 4 miles difference. And what the ACEs pyramid tells us that people who have 6 or 7 of these ACEs will die up to 20 years difference. So that's a huge impact on people's lives. In Idaho, and I'm going to go through some Idaho statistics that we have, and we're working to get better statistics, but the data we have is what we've got right now. But these are the most reported things. Surprisingly, I think to many of us, our children are experiencing ACEs at a higher rate than in many states. I think maybe we think of this as somebody else's problem, but it's ours. So that kids are scoring 3 or more ACEs, and we know that when you have 3 or more, 4 or more, the number of ACEs is cumulative, so it impacts greater. And we're collecting more data. There's some early data available in raw form, and hopefully within the next few months we'll have something that'll give us a better picture of what's happening in Idaho. Again, these are the ACE scores for Idaho. But we have fewer kids who have 0, who have no ACEs, and more kids who have 4 or more. You can see that at either end. We are, significantly higher. You can kind of look across this. These were the measures from the National Survey of Children's Health. You can see where our children are experiencing hard to get by on the income, lower income, living with somebody with household mental illness or household substance abuse. Those ones are higher than the national average significantly. So this is the experience of the kids in our communities. Now this is a sample. Boise State did a study of the juvenile detention centers around the state, and what they found was this information, which you can kind of see on The middle is in that sample of kids who were in juvenile detention, and then kids in the general population. And you can see how it's almost reversed. You know, the kids who have 0 in the general population, 45.8% of them. Down at the kids who have 5 or more in the juvenile detention are 38. You know, so you're looking at, you know, almost a reverse situation. Few kids in juvenile detention have no ACEs. And at the other end, few, you know, relatively few of our kids have 5 or more. And then, just to add that, what they also found was that at the various detention centers, Canyon County ended up with the highest, with kids with the highest ACE scores in the state. I'm sure this is a moving target, but this was over a 10-year, right? 10-year period? 11, okay, 11-year period. So you can kind of see where the highest and lowest are there. So this is, so what's really important to understand is that it's not just, you know, it's not just, okay, we have these, you know, these things happen to us and we go forward, but that it actually affects brain development. And there's a ton of information on this, and we're just going to, you know, I'm just touching on it, but that when you live with toxic stress, what develops stronger is your ability on fight, flight, or freeze. Less so on the kind of higher, upstairs brain kind of concept, you know, so that your ability to think or to be successful in school and so on are impacted greatly by early brain development. And, you know, one of the things I think that was surprising maybe to many of us, or to some of us, to me, was that if you look at, you know, early, that you think babies are not impacted by the, you know, by the environmental stimulus around them, but babies are extremely impacted by that. Janelle has tremendous amount of information on that. You know, we have experts in this room on all these different areas, so, you know, these are just quick vignettes on these ideas, but, you know, we can change that by changing the environment in which kids grow up. This is kind of a fancy analysis that shows how ACEs impact various things going on in the school, so that you can see that ACEs impact learning disabilities almost by 65%. So you know that if you were to take ACEs out of the equation, how many children would not be experiencing learning disabilities, and then how many children would succeed more in school, and then how many kids would be stronger in the workforce, and, you know, on, right, until we have adults who are really able to function. So these are huge things, and so focusing on ACEs gives us the opportunity to make those kinds of changes. Again, talking about economic impact. So you can see the whole bunch. You have that on your table. But, you know, some of these main things, at $124 billion are the annual cost of ACEs, according to the CDC. And, you know, the really important thing is that there's a 7-to-1 investment. For every dollar spent on preventing ACEs, we get a $7 ROI. That's amazing. Who would invest in that? Everybody? Let's invest in that. This is just a quick way of looking at this, but you can see with the adverse childhood experiences, you know, this is sort of at the personal level, and then down below, what we can do when you have adverse community environments that, you know, have a great deal of poverty or lack of opportunity. Some of the things I think that Jean's talking about when she talks about those differences between North and South Nampa and, you know, in different areas of the state. So there was just a recent report this last month that was, I think, kind of took what we knew but sort of consolidated in a really important way to look at this vital signs report is telling us that we could prevent 21 million cases of depression, 1.9 million cases of heart disease, again, the #1 killer in America, and 2.5 million cases of overweight or obesity. And so the main issue here, you know, to come, you know, again, takeaway is that preventing ACEs could help prevent poor health and life outcomes. So you kind of see that as we did kind of, I'd call this more a back of the envelope
kind of calculation. We just took the CDC's numbers and said, okay, if this were true for Idaho, what might that mean? And it could mean that over 30,000 fewer people experience depression. It would keep 60,000 people from smoking. It would, the impacts of smoking on health. Prevent nearly 30,000 cases of asthma, and even reduce unemployment by nearly 15%. I mean, these are gigantic things, and hopefully it doesn't sound like pie in the sky, but I think what we really recognize is that the impacts of carrying toxic stress, of being in those traumatic situations for your life, impact so many of the things that we want to solve and improve in our communities. But, and this really is the pivot point. We always say ACEs are not destiny. ACEs are something that you have, but they're not the end of the story. They're there to tell us that we should know about this, but to know about it is to act on it. And so we say risk factors don't have to be predictive factors with enough protective factors. So there are things in our lives. So if you look at this, we talk about something called health outcomes from positive experiences, or HOPE. It's just a nice acronym, but the idea being that if we build more positive experiences, they offset the impacts of ACEs. Dr. Patterson has tremendous stuff on this idea, or not. It's not an idea, it's the science. The science tells us that, the positive experiences offset the negative, and that's where really why we come together here is not to wallow in the problem, but to think about, well, what is it that we can do in our community that's going to create a change? And so many of you are already doing that. And so some of it is about scale. How do we reach more people? How do we talk about it more? How do we figure out what the right public policies are for those people working in that arena, day-to-day work for those people who work in that arena, and so on. But the whole idea being that we need connected systems and supports, things that create for all of us working together in ways that will achieve the ends we want, which are reductions in crime, fewer justice-involved youth, fewer children in foster care, fewer youth in mental health crisis, families drawing on their strengths, steady employment. All of those things are the things that all of us are trying to do as we work day to day in our communities. So the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, am I doing on time? Okay. The Centers for Disease Control and Prevention talks about these 5 things that will prevent early adversity. So these are create an environment that supports parents and positive parenting, enhance parenting skills to promote healthy child development, strengthen economic supports for families, ensure a strong start for children, and intervene to lessen harms. Now these are big categories of things, obviously. These are, it would be a big list under each of them for things that we could be doing to do each of those things, and that's the point. And they give us some blueprint for that, but this is a community-based effort, not something we need to take from the feds. We talk a lot about resilience. Resilience is really the number one protective factor. It's the ability to cope when things go wrong. It's also the ability to, it also needs to be something when things go wrong, that we have somebody there to help us work our way through it. And particularly for children, this is critical. We learn resilience. Resilience is not necessarily something you're born with. It's something that you can build over time, and that's the critical point. It can be built, and it's built heavily through these several what we call protective factors. Social connections, meaning that you have healthy people in your lives, that you have knowledge of both adolescent and child development as a parent, so that you don't assume too many things about your child's growth and development, but you work with them to communicate and so on. That you have the basics of life, concrete supports, that you develop communication skills and cognitive, social, emotional competence, and then broadly, like Janelle asked us to breathe, to reduce the stressors. And we know a lot of kids come into school super stressed out. We need to figure out how to help them take that down so that they can learn, because that's what we want to have happen. The Centers for Disease Control and Prevention also talks a lot about this idea, basically, that what we're working for every kid is safe, stable, and nurturing environments. This is just an example of one community in Washington State that sort of through basically doing what we're talking about now, started to look at some of the things they were doing in their communities to impact domestic violence, dropout rate, et cetera. And they see these kind of amazing results over, I mean, it's not a short-term thing, right? This is something that is over time, but, we're going to be here for a while, hopefully. So imagine what we can do together. And maybe at this point, we're going to just say imagine. I'm going to give you a little quick, but, things we can do now. We can strengthen economic supports to families. That may be Representative Youngblood and other folks at the state level who can be doing that, but also at the local level, what can we be doing? Promoting social norms or the kind of environments that protect against violence and adversity, ensure a strong start for children. All kids do not get the same, don't start at the same place. How do we make sure that they do, or give them a leg up when they don't? Teach skills for parents, for community, for others. Connect youth to caring adults and activities. We know that the number one thing for all kids, and this really is the most important takeaway, is that the most important thing in any kid's life is one caring adult. 2 caring adults is even better. 3 even better, but 1 is critical. So this is with the idea that we are starting this process into what can we be doing with 2C Kids Succeed, and how can we start to make an impact on kids' lives by building education and awareness, by addressing how 2C Kids Can Succeed connects with other things like the health coalitions. I want to mention the Idaho Resilience Project, which you'll hear a little bit more about, I think. And the Idaho Resilience Project is an effort to bring together all of the people thinking about ACEs and resiliency and how we can work together to align what we do, both at a community level and a practice level of whatever role that you play. And that, again, is one of the other critical issues for all of us, I think, is is that all of us have a role to play. And each of those roles will be different, but each of those roles is crucial. And so, you may be a mentor, Donna's work here, you may be, counselor, like several people in the room are doing. You may be the shelter, the support. I mean, there's just so many different roles, I think, that are already being played. You're a councilman, you're a legislator. But each of these roles are the roles that are going to make a difference in changing the lives of our families and kids. And this understanding sort of is a start to help you see how, maybe we approach this in some different ways than we have in the past. And we can have, greater and greater results like what we saw in the Washington State example. So I think my time is due, I'm sure. And thank you for that. I look forward to seeing what all of us can do together. We're a statewide effort in the organization I work for, and I'd like to be working with you all as well. So thank you for this time.
That was excellent. Thank you all so much for that. At this time, we're going to start our panel forum discussion. So I will be moderating that. My name is Matt Davison. I'm the publisher of the Idaho Press. I see a lot of familiar and passionate faces in this audience, and I just want to thank you for being here and taking this first step. Obviously, many of us know Jean, and let me tell you, when she gets her teeth into something, she doesn't let go. So at this point, I would like to invite up, and I'm going to actually place you where I need you so I can walk through these questions in order. Luis Granados, if you could join me on that side right there. Brian Taylor next to him. Shelley Bonds right here. Lindsay Turner. And don't worry, these folks will introduce themselves in just a minute. Donna Shines and Jose Nairo. If you guys could please join me on stage, that'd be great. So we are just slightly behind schedule, but I'm hoping that we can catch up quickly and keep you engaged and still get you out of here at 9 o'clock. We've got a lot of important people in this room, and we want to be respectful of their time. So with that, here's the format we're going to go through, okay? We're going to try and keep a time. And I'm going to ask each one of you a grand total of 3 questions. You will have a minute and a half to answer those questions, and I will interrupt you if you go over, politely, hopefully. And I would encourage you to just address this as you would in your career. If you want to spin the question or take a piece of it, that is fine as well. This is intended to be an educational discussion, and hopefully we will be able to inform folks here so we can take some actual meaningful action towards this objective. So I'm going to ask each one of you to start with a very quick introduction, and Gene, I'm going to change it up on you a little bit. We're going to go through that real quick. So in just a very brief 10 seconds or less, Luis, could you please introduce yourself?
My name is Luis Granados. I'm Executive Director of Breaking Chains Academy of Development. We work with at-risk youth, provide them with tools and alternatives that they need in order to help them successfully transition into adulthood.
Brian Taylor, I'm the prosecuting attorney for Canyon County.
Shelley Bonds, I'm the Executive Director for our elementary schools for the Nampa School District.
Hi, I'm Lindsay Turner. I'm an education professor at Boise State University. I'm actually a psychologist by training, and during my training I realized it's hard for kids to be healthy in an environment that's not healthy. So I switched into public health to focus on social determinants of health and social determinants of mental health as well.
Donna Shines with the Mentoring Network. We're serving Canyon and Owyhee County School Districts, 5 districts, 60 schools with mentors.
I'm Jose Valle. I'm the new Chief Programs Officer for Idaho Youth Reg. I used to work for the Department of Health and Welfare as Chief of Children's Mental Health. But now I look for opportunity to be in the front lines and helping kids grow in a much healthier way.
Okay, thank you for that. So now that we know our panel, we're just going to move from my right, your left, over across here. We're going to do one question for each one of our panelists, and they will have a minute and a half to give us their best answer. And then at the end, we will ask the same question to all 6 of you up here. So we're going to start with you, Luis. Here is the basic question. What have you found to be effective ways to gain the trust of youth who have and continue to experience adverse childhood experiences?
Well, I've been working with at-risk youth for a good 7 years now. And prior to that, I myself was one of these youth. And what I know and what I've learned is that these youth are intelligent. So they look around at the support system and they know if you're there because you're there for a paycheck, or they know if you're there because you truly want to support them and help them succeed. So I think it's important to make myself transparent when I work with these kids. I let them know that I'm just like them. Until this day, I'm still dealing with the traumas from my ACEs. I tell them, you know, you might be considered an at-risk youth. I consider myself an at-risk adult at times. I still need that support system and that structure for me to stay on track and for me to continue doing what I'm doing. With that being said, as we look at this data, I do think we have to take this into account, not only in these alternative kind of resources that we provide, but we need to carry this data over into our public school system and into our criminal justice system. And we need to understand that these kids are all case by case with their special ACEs and their own traumas, and they deal and respond to those differently, which means they're going to respond to different social cues differently. They're going to respond to different social interactions, social environments, and most of all to authority. And we need to take that into consideration when we're trying to plant that seed of success in these kids and trying to gain their trust so that they do trust us. So in a nutshell, I believe it's about building relationships, sincere, genuine relationships, and not treating these kids as they're just another number in our caseload.
Perfect. He knows what he's doing. There's almost exactly a minute and a half. Mr. Taylor, on to you. How do you think adverse childhood experiences... Sorry, that was my timer telling you to be quiet. All right, sorry about that. Mr. Taylor, how do you think adverse childhood experiences impact early juvenile justice involvement, and do you see continued impact as youth become adults?
Yeah, so the first part of the question is how does it impact juvenile justice as sort of the entry or the involvement? First and foremost, I see a lot of my law enforcement brethren, myself, juvenile probation. We don't have the luxury of having full-blown ACEs survey in front of us of what impacts that they have. We're trying to identify what caused them to do the crimes in which they did and whether or not to engage them into the system. For example, if a child as simple as running away from home, why are they running away? So do we initiate a criminal charge against this child solely to get them into the system so we can provide them the services or not the services? Or is the ACEs, the better approach is to find a program here in the community to assist them? The second part of the question is, is how does it impact them going into the adult world? Is we get the luxury of looking at what we call pre-sentence investigations, and from my experience of doing this almost 20 years, is almost every single one of them, when you look at this packet that's 50 to 100 pages of their entire life history, you could probably start categorizing 4+ ACEs on almost all these individuals. And you start wondering, is there some point in the system in which we could have intervened at an earlier stage? But by the time they get to me in the system, they're quite far along, and that intervention opportunities end up being in the corrections facility. So that's, I guess, the short summation there.
Thank you very much.
I don't want to get farther.
Okay, moving on to you, Shelley. How do adverse childhood experiences impact children within the Nampa School District, and how pervasive is trauma among our students?
We see adverse childhood experiences impact kids in a variety of ways. We see them show up with kids who shut down, who refuse to engage. Their heads are down, they don't want to do work. It's refusal to do work. We have some kids who show up who explode. They go from 0 to 60 without any warning. We have some kids who show up who don't show any indicators, but they're quiet and they withdraw. Kids show up to us and it looks different in every building, and it looks different for every child. And one of the things that we have become pretty attuned to is needing to know more. So we've been working really hard on starting to educate teachers and leaders and parents around what trauma is and what trauma-informed education begins to look like. And we've worked and leaned into things like positive behavior intervention, which is building connections and building relationships and helping kids know that there's people who care. It is very pervasive amongst kids in the Nampa School District. It transcends all socioeconomic boundaries. This does not just happen in poor schools. This happens in all schools. And we see it every day in all 24 of our schools. It doesn't discriminate. It is everywhere.
Thank you very much. Hold on to that. Okay, now we're going to move over here to Lindsay Turner. Research shows that prevention and early intervention are foundational to decreasing the impact of adverse childhood experiences. What does the data demonstrate as best practices and most effective?
So Roger set this up really nicely for me with that slide that talked about the 6 big picture strategies that can be effective. 2 weeks ago, the timing of this event is great because 2 weeks ago CDC released a big report reviewing decades of literature on what exactly works. So looking at the science on this, and I'm going to talk about a couple specific strategies from 2 of those areas. One being ensure an early start for kids, and the other being economics, but there were 6 strategies. So as Roger said, and as everyone has echoed, there's a role for everyone in this room. So an early start for kids, some of the programs that work are home visitation programs for new moms. This is helpful because it not only helps support moms during a time of vulnerability for mental health issues of their own, but also is an opportunity for teaching parenting skills. The second being supporting early childhood education and valuing that, because that helps kids show up to kindergarten not only being ready to read and learn, but also being ready to be citizens within their school and helps them with the social emotional skills they need to succeed. In terms of economic development, 2 specific strategies that show up as really having a strong return on investment in that CDC review. First is earned income tax credit, which might not necessarily seem like it's associated with ACEs, but it is a way for families who are struggling financially to have more of their money to take care of their families. So that is a really important economic support for lower income families. And then the second is encouraging employers to have family-friendly policies around work leave, ensuring they have benefits for healthcare coverage. But a family, a working parent should not have to decide between taking their child to a medical appointment and getting a paycheck, that they need to support their family. So employers have a huge role in this as well in terms of those policies that really value the family.
Thank you very much. Donna Shines. First question for you. The most important protective factor for children experiencing high levels of childhood trauma is buffering by a trusted, consistent adult. How do you see this demonstrated through mentoring?
Thank you, Matt. this is how I see it being demonstrated. We have over 195 kids with mentors right now. Every one of those, excuse me, every one of those kids is unique. And I love what I'm hearing on this panel because they're not numbers. We are all human beings. So the way we see it, we do year-end surveys with our kids. And the 3 things, they have a bazillion things to check off why they love having a mentor. But what they say consistently over 20 years now is, my mentor shows up, my mentor listens, and my mentor cares. Right there, it tells me that. The other things you see, grades, attendance, and behaviors are impacted in a positive way. To me, that's kind of a no-brainer. I was a teacher for many, many years. Because somebody shows up and cares and they have good teachers already, they just need that extra added somebody in their life. One little story, it took 8 years for one of our kids to finally tell her mentor the abuse that had been happening to her whole life. Now, that took her 8 years to trust an adult. 8 years. The schools thought something was going on, but couldn't prove anything. So that's how powerful this is. And all we do is show up, listen, and care. Non-judgmental, friendship building, spending an hour a week with a child. Not many kids get a whole hour of undivided, uninterrupted attention from an adult in a week now. We're pretty busy people, we think.
Thank you, Donna. Jose, question for you. Youth entering Idaho Youth Ranch programs often have a high ACE score. What is the most common reason youth enter programming?
Thank you, Matt. When kids enter our programs, they enter through different doors. One is through our outpatient program, and the other one is through Hay Shelter. That's a facility where we take kids who are homeless, kids who are in the custody of the Department of Health and Welfare. And so they enter for a variety of reasons. In the outpatient program, they enter because of, right now we see an increase of kids reporting having anxiety, and then depression, and then parent-child problems. And at our Hay Shelter, we see kids who are actually placed there because they have had difficulty being placed with a foster parent or being reunified with their parents, and or because they're homeless. And so I'll give you some numbers that we have that our ACEs report shows. As far as our kids, and this is the last 500 kids that we given ACE, when we giving evaluations, and they report, 39% of them report seeing a family member being hit, punched, or kicked very hard at home. 37% reported being beat up, shot at, or being threatened to be hurt badly. 31% reported being hit, kicked, or punched very hard at home. And 31% reported seeing someone in real life being beaten up. So what we see is kids that are being traumatized. As you know, the brain wires you and wires me for connection. But trauma wires kids that are traumatized for protection. And what that means is that we have kids out there who are constantly on the guard, and either they're becoming very, keeping the problems to themselves, or they're becoming highly aggressive. So these are the type of kids that we're seeing, but I think with this new initiative, we can certainly do much better than that.
Thank you, Jose. Good discussion points here. Let's move on to question number 2 for you, Luis. What kind of support can we offer youth impacted by adverse childhood experiences?
I believe it's a combination of providing hope, skills, and support for these kids. And this combination needs to be held together, in my opinion, by education. And when I say education, I don't mean diplomas and degrees, although those are very important. I'm talking about education as far as teaching these kids how to think. Not what to think, but how to think. Having those real-life conversations, again, exposing them to those different types of social environments, social situations, and really just exposing them and getting them educated. We know when a person becomes educated, they grow a wider perspective of the world. And with this wider perspective come these healthy alternative choices to these bad decisions or bad circumstances that they're used to being in. And again, I have to stress that these are unique cases, case by case. Are some of these kids going to need second, third, fourth, fifth chances? Absolutely. Are some of these kids going to need extra attention, special attention? Absolutely. I've been asked before, well, when do you know that you're getting taken advantage of? And I mean, honestly, I'd rather feel a little frustrated, stressed, and taken advantage of than keep seeing, these kids in the newspapers dying on our streets or going to prison for life, these teenagers. So I think we have to reassure them that we will not give up on them and that those days are over of giving up on them and that we're here to support them no matter what.
Very good. Thank you. Mr. Taylor, what do you think is most important to prevent justice involvement for those who have experienced significant adversity, and how do you think we can best support as a county?
I would say 4 primary things is, one is, can we build hope as a community for these youth? Hope is so important in our day and times. I think resiliency, being able to teach the resiliency, early intervention as fast as possible with regards to every single entity and each one of us individually, and also recognizing trauma and toxic stress. As I think sometimes we go through the days, if you're not dealing with this every single day, you just overlook certain aspects. From a criminal justice standpoint, something that we've been considering is looking at what we refer to as victims and witnesses that we encounter, right, every single day, is how do we start assessing their needs rather than just treating them as witnesses and victims. It's always those aspects. There's cases that just haunt you. There's a case many years ago that I tried. A gentleman had sexually abused a number of young boys, and you knew their life history. They didn't have an ACEs score, right? They probably scored 6 to 9, each one of these 3 boys. After the trial, the gentleman was convicted, sent to prison, but these boys never got the help and treatment. One ended up being a domestic batterer, got charged with a felony later on. Another one is currently incarcerated at the State Board of Corrections for sexually abusing a minor boy. A third one is no one knows where he is. The last we saw was a photograph of him in Mexico, believing that he was trafficked in the sex trade. So could we have done something better in the system of identifying these victims in the aspect of not treating them just from the aspect of the criminal justice system, but helping them with what we're talking about today?
Thank you, Brian. Shelley, second question for you. What can the broader community do to engage around creating support systems beyond our schools to mitigate the impact of ACEs?
I think we're starting that here today. It is everybody in the community starting to have an open conversation about that this is a thing. It starts at early screening when a kiddo goes to the doctor and us starting to look at the parent who has ACEs, which we know is critical. It's about us having conversations when we're meeting families for the first time. It's about wrapping our arms around each other. And I've said before, and if everybody's looking out for somebody and we start to look at it that way, and we start to look at how we can take care of each other and say, what has happened to you versus what is the matter with you as a community, I believe that is when the broader community is going to start to see the conversation change, and we're going to start to see our outcomes change. It is going to take everybody engaging.
Thank you. I think that's very true. Everybody needs to engage for sure. Lindsay, second question for you. As a researcher working in many of our Canyon County schools, how important are social emotional learning and resilience building practices in our schools?
They're crucial, that's all. They're absolutely essential, and there are a lot of really good programs that are either curriculum that teachers can deliver to help students understand social and develop social emotional skills, or things that are much more system-wide culture change frameworks like positive behavioral interventions and supports. There's so many great programs. They take work and resources and money to bring them into our schools, and I'm doing everything I can as a professor in the College of Education to be a good partner and to try and write grants, federal grants, whatever grants I can find to bring those resources to our schools. But I think what we can do here is value our education system ideally our state would have the resources to allocate more money to fund our education system. And I say that not just because Shelley talked before me, but the work that our educators are doing is so important, and we certainly need everyone on board. ACEs are a family issue, a community issue, and we see it showing up in schools. So valuing and supporting our educators, I think, is absolutely crucial.
Thank you very much. Donna, on to you. Adult community members in children's lives are so key to mitigating the impact of adverse childhood experiences. What would be possible if our communities built strong support around every community member who has experienced ACEs?
Well, it would become the way we are. It would be a culture shift in our communities. It'd be a different way of looking at each other. I think what we're doing here today is amazing. I love talking about kids. They're my passion, but we've got a room full of people in here, and I'll bet you 50% have 4 or more ACEs that they marked on that sheet. That's who's working with the kids, and no one's helped them deal with their ACEs, maybe. So to me, this is an incredible conversation about all community members, all ages. Kids are it, yes, but we can't depend on the kids to fix us as adults. We need to be a part of this. And so I just want to put that out there as a little bit greater, wider vision of what could this become. Oh my goodness. It's culture changing right here in Canyon County. So thank you for all just being here and being passionate about our communities. I so appreciate that.
Thank you, Donna. Jose, how does the Idaho Youth Ranch use trauma-informed practices to build resilience in the youth you support?
Okay, so before I answer the question, I want to just make sure that we understand that there's a belief system out there that kids behave badly because they want to gain something out of you or out of the system. But in reality, research shows that kids actually, these kids that we call troublemakers or oppositional, actually lack 3 basic skills. These are skills that actually can be learned. One of them is flexibility. They don't have the flexibility to, like we do, to solve problems. They don't have that frustration tolerance. They become highly aggressive or highly keep everything to themselves, and they don't have the problem-solving skills. So what we do at the Idaho Youth Ranch is try to adopt trauma-based, trauma-informed practices like trauma-focused cognitive behavioral therapy, EMDR, and then we also do practices like at the shelter. What we do is we have our kiddos there eat together as a family. You wouldn't believe that tremendous gains that the brain does when you eat together. That's probably one of the best predictors of good outcomes if you have eating together as a family or as a group. So we're doing that. We're also trying to do provide other practices that we have seen here in the state, that is like equine therapy or equine assisted therapy, therapy with horses. And then we're also in the process of a campaign drives to build our 64-bed facility in Canyon County. It will be a psychiatric residential facility to treat kids from Idaho who are facing these adverse challenges in life.
Great. Thank you very much. We are right on schedule, so we're going to move on to the last question. This will be the same question for each of the individuals on our panel, and then hopefully we'll have a few minutes left at the end of this to get some audience questions. Do you have another microphone for the audience, or will we use the same ones? Okay, that's fine. That's probably better that way anyway. Okay, moving on. So, Luis, question to you is, and this is the same question for everyone, what inspires you most about the opportunity to change the narrative for our kids and our community to one of hope and resilience?
What inspires me and brings me hope is showing up to work in the morning and seeing a handful of kids that are out there already waiting for me to open those doors. That brings me hope. What brings me hope is seeing them come into the building and grab some of the food that got donated to us from the community, watch them have breakfast that day. That brings me hope. When I see them sit down with their work folders, grab some brand new GED books that were donated to us or that we bought with grant money that was awarded to us, that brings me hope. When I take a kid to his last GED test and he passes and we celebrate in the CWI parking lot by hugging for like 5 minutes, that brings me hope. When later that week he sends me a picture of his diploma once he receives it and sends me a text that says, wow, I've never felt this way about myself before. I'm proud of myself. That brings me hope. When I get up in the morning and I'm sorry. I look in the mirror and after 31 years I can say, I'm proud of you to my reflection. That brings me hope. And the reason it brings me hope is because everything I just mentioned is a product of community coming together and certain people in the community addressing a problem and doing something about that problem. And as I look around in this room and I see all these people in here, that brings me hope. Because I know if we all do our part, we can definitely make a difference and make Canyon County an amazing place for our kids to grow up and to become productive members of our community.
Thank you very much. Ryan, what gives you hope?
What gives me hope is seeing these kiddos that I have to interact with every single day and how resilient they actually are and how strong they are going through the worst possible life experience imaginable. And yet they're still joyful, they're still smiling. You can just see that resilience and hope in their eyes. What also gives me hope is all of you. This community is remarkable in every aspect. It's how we come together, we work on solutions and making our community better. Last night I was indoctrinating my son into Star Wars, and there was this line as I was thinking about this meeting. It says, rebellions are built on hope. And I was thinking to myself, you know, maybe Canyon County is ripe for a rebellion to eliminate adverse childhood experiences. So, let's do it.
Thank you, Brian. Shelley, what inspires and gives you hope?
Oh. Well, we're here. 5 years ago when we were talking about ACEs, there was like a handful of us. And we're here. I can talk about individual kids who I see when we lean in, absolutely, and it's done well, and we get them the support they need, and we get parents the support they need, their story changes. I can tell you personally of kids that I have known, worked with, that I taught, who people had given up on and have invited me to their GED and CWI graduation from the Law Enforcement Academy at the top of their class. Like, we have hope. And the minute we've all decided to lean in instead of look away, that gives me immense amounts of hope because I can see in the faces of our kids, the little boy that came up to me on Tuesday. And I said, what are you learning? And he said, I'm learning how to write a letter. And I said, why do you need to know how to do that? Why do you need to know how to learn that? And he said, because I need to know how to write a letter to my dad who's in prison. And he talked about it like it was nothing. This is his life. He has hope, and I have hope for him. And so thank you for being here and engaging in this conversation.
Thank you very much. Lindsay, how about you? What inspires and gives you hope?
Well, just as everyone else has had, seeing a room full of people who were here, taking time out of your day, showing up is incredible. It's really such a blessing for our community. I feel so grateful to have a job that I love, that lets me do something that makes me feel like I'm making a difference. That is such an incredible privilege. And I wanted that, whether that was being a psychologist and helping provide care for kids who needed it, or now being in my role at Boise State and being able to build these partnerships to try and bring resources. I get to work with some incredible champions. Jean is such a gem in our community, and I love to see this room full of people who are all joining forces and working together on this, so thank you.
Thank you very much. Donna, how about you? Inspires and hope?
Well, this room, of course. It was really fun walking into this room and just smiling as I met so many people that I've known, many of you for a lifetime in Canyon County. And it's so fun to see us all grow up and be here saying, hey, we can even do better. Our parents did pretty well, but we can do even better. So here's what brings me hope, the kids. I mean, we see kids that I tell mentors they're not broken. We are not broken people. They just need somebody to come alongside them. But what also brings me hope is that we're beginning to understand we have got to have real FaceTime. We have to hear one another's stories. We have to build trust among us to hear the stories. Just the stories in this room alone would be amazing to hear of what was childhood like for you and how did you get where you are today. So that brings me hope that we're starting to say, this is valuable. We're here face to face. That's pretty dang cool. Together, we've got collective enoughness. And you know what? We can build this community that I think we all want. Resilient, hopeful, safe, thriving, compassionate. I'm really excited that we're all here. So thank you all for being here and for giving me some more hope. I'm pretty filled with it, but now I'm really filled.
Thank you, Donna. Jose?
So there are a lot of things that give me hope. There are a lot of people that give me hope. I have 9 grandchildren, and the other day I received a picture through Instagram by one of my grandkids who's 6 years old, who was drawing a picture. And she was drawing the picture because she was feeling stress at school. And so her mom, my daughter, asked her to do this. Asked her if that's, how would she like to deal with that stress? And she said, I like to paint. And so she did that. And it gives me hope that we can provide those tools, that knowledge to all the parents that we serve. Also, what gives me hope is compassion. I see a lot of compassion here in this room. And compassion that actually, compassion can drive us to do impossible things. And I think compassion is what's going to save us. If we don't have compassion for this, if we don't have commitment for what we do, then we're going to not do too well. But I think we're in a new direction right now, and I really look forward to working with you and being able to be part of that movement.
Thank you very much. Okay, that wraps up our fire Q&A session. Now we're going to open it up to audience questions. We've got a few minutes, not a bunch, but a few. So if you, I guess I could just do this so that we'll make it easy, okay? Traveling microphone. Any questions out there? It always helps if we start with a seed question. So anyone got one of those? Where do we go from here? When we leave this room, what's next? Anyone want to take that? Thank you, Donna.
I would love to. Go have coffee, tea, a glass of water with someone you've always made assumptions about, whether it be child or adult, and get to know them. That's where we start. That's how we build our community. All this deals with this.
Matt, we can probably use that as the closing.
Okay. I was just going to...
We're pretty good.
Okay. I was going to say the one thing, just real quick, Gene, while I have the microphone, I'll turn it over to you. I would just like to say, with that question, one is vote. 10 votes shy of a school district is just unacceptable in this community. And support the groups that support children. I'm a board member for the Boys and Girls Club. We desperately need a second location. I will be leading a panel with Melissa's support to try and expand our services into South Nampa, and we will ask for all of you to be very involved in helping us raise the funds and find the resources to pull that off. Those are the things that support our community. The Boys and Girls Club, I think, is a great example of that. We turn kids away every day right now, and I'm very proud of Jean, who helped get us some actually on-site counseling services to come and be a part of that group. So thank you all for being here. I will just let you have it from here.
So I think that's always the question, what's next? And you have a card on your table. This today can only be the start line. And I want to, looking out at the audience here, I want to say thank you to our leaders, to our law enforcement partners. You do a yeoman's lift every day to ensure that our kids and our families are safe. And as the wife of a public safety officer, you guys work really hard. Michael, your team, you bring people to hospitals in crisis all day long. There's not one person in here that can't do something. And I think what we have to really focus on is not making it too complicated. You showing up is a lot. This panel, I think you heard from Luis, you're doing brilliant work and you're sitting next to the Canyon County prosecuting attorney. That right there is remarkable. We've got our schools leaning in, we've got researchers, we've got mentors, and Citizen of the Year. Congratulations, Donna. We've got the Youth Ranch doing really important work, but it can't just be service providers leaning in. It takes all of us. You saw the economic impact. There's a business case for this. When our kids succeed, we have thriving economies, we have safe communities, we have healthy parents raising healthy kids. It's incumbent upon all of us. And so do not leave, please, without filling this out. And then I'm going to invite Mayor Kling and Representative Youngblood back up to close us out, but I want to leave you with this. As you walk out the door, we had a couple other slides, but I think we're just going to skip it. The Idaho Resilience Project has emerged, and there's more than 80 organizations statewide linked into this. And it's a movement across the state to mitigate ACEs and grow resilience. We've got emerging work with Idaho Public Television. We're going to do a statewide documentary called Resilient Idaho, Hope Lives Here. You heard from Roger the power of hope. So that will be aired across our entire state this next fall. And it'll tell our story. Where is resilience in our tribal communities in Canyon County? What I love about To See Kids Succeed is that we get to be the first demonstration project of that regional work. So this will create the footprint for how the rest of the state can say, how do we bring people together from all sectors to lean in? And it starts here today. So our ask of you is that you don't walk out of here today thinking that I went to a breakfast. You came here today and said, I'm going to link arms with somebody intentionally across Canyon County to see kids succeed. I'm grateful to each and every one of you, and I want to leave you with a kite. Jeannie's in the back and some others. How many of you have a memory of being a child of flying a kite? Hopefully lots of you. What happens to the kite if it doesn't catch the right wind? Crashes and burns, huh? How many of you would get so frustrated? Run and it's just skipping across the ground and so frustrating. What happened if an adult picked up that kite for you, held it a little bit higher than you were, gave you a little boost so it could catch some air? So I think that's what we're talking about with resilience building and seeing our kids succeed. When the conditions are right, kites soar. When the conditions are right, our kids, our families, our communities soar. So please take a kite. There are specific ones where kids should color them. Don't give a child a kite. Sit down with the kite and have a child color the kite and then help them find the right conditions so that that will soar. So please take that with you. And then Representative Youngblood and Mayor Kling and Senator Lee, please come on up and close us out. But do not please leave without filling in what you're committed to do. We will be reaching back out. Thanks to our panel.
Guests this morning, I gave a special invitation out to Senator Abby Lee to be with us this morning. I appreciate her driving all the way over from Fruitland and dealing with the traffic. Senator Lee has been very active as a legislator, working with several programs. I'd like for her to share, for all of us to know a lot of the things that are happening at the state. So Abby, please share for a minute.
Thank you. I know I'm standing between you and getting on with your day, and if it weren't for the traffic, that accident right before the Caldwell exit. So, but thank you for just giving me a moment. I wanted to leave you with a little bit of hope. We've worked really hard in the legislature to start addressing some of these issues, and many of you may not know, it wasn't about 4 years ago we started looking at some child welfare reform and foster care in particular, and we started asking the question, how many of our youth in juvenile corrections go on to the Department of Corrections? And we weren't tracking that. We weren't tracking that in Idaho. So we have now started tracking that. And in 2016, we passed some significant foster care reform. In 2018, we actually passed what we called in the legislature the 2018 Foster Care Reform Act. And those of you who work in that field know we've done some things, but what I want to leave you with is we also, as part of that, started a Child Welfare Oversight Committee in the legislature, which was a big lift to get a new committee started. With Representative Youngblood's help and JFAC, the Finance Appropriation Committee, we for the first time put general fund monies, which are really precious to us in Idaho, for home visiting. So when we talk about some of those prevention things, we are starting to do that. And we are meeting, our Child Welfare Oversight Committee is meeting on December 5th. I'm co-chair of that with Representative Moyle. And so I would invite you to reach out to us and share some of the things that you're doing here. I just offer that as a pipeline. What you're doing here gives me hope. Mayor, what you're doing to focus on the grassroots prevention things, we stand ready to partner with you on that policy piece. So lest you think that you've got to find a way to bring these things to the policy level, we have a ready platform for you, and we want to be able to stand with you and use this as a model to show other places in the state how we can help not only make the business case, but make the human case for why this is the right thing. And so thank you for letting me just take a minute and to be here with you and to partner with you on all the things that you're doing.
Thank you, Senator, and the good work that you're doing. Real quick, 2016, I had the privilege with 6 others from Idaho to attend Oslo, Norway, to understand the principles of normality. They had written a white paper in 2012. Our correctional facilities today, we have space for about 7,800. We have peaked as high as 8,200. Today we are at 9,300 incarcerated. The principles of normality changed my life, changed my way of thinking, because it's those folks that are in the incarceration do not know normal. That falls back to childhood. They were not raised in normal environments. So, Josh DeWalt, who's the new director of corrections for Idaho, an awesome individual, was one of the 6 that went with us to Norway, understands and is working hard. A lot of that normality we lose in pardons and parole with recidivism. It can happen in Idaho, it can happen across the U.S. Help those inmates who are incarcerated to understand the principles of normal life that all of us here, most of us here know and were raised. And it starts at childhood. Thank you for being here, Mayor.
Thank you so much. Thank you. So I loved our last question, which is what is next? And I had written a note sitting there, so what is my role? What is my role as mayor? And I would ask you, what is your role? As we began this morning, we talked about the power of one, right? But the difference, so when you think about what is my role, it's not about me, right? So it's what is my role as it relates to responsibility, the realm that you have, which is your role of influence in your personal life. But then it steps over into none of us can be successful unless a lot of others want them to be, right? Our kids can't, we can't. This is about we, but it begins with what is my responsibility. So I would ask you to ponder and on your cards to say, what is my role in this and how can I make a difference? And then the commitment from myself and from the role of pulling together and to see kids succeed is that we will follow up and to create that framework of unity coming together because we can't do it alone. So understanding the principle, what is my role, and then what are we collectively going to do about it? So we will get it done because we have amazing people here, and it's the individual, it's the city, it's the state, it's the county, it's all of us working together. So thank you for being here today. Thank you for making a difference, and I am really excited to see where we're going to go. Are we good? Okay, Matt. Matt, you did an awesome job. Thank you so much.
I can run a timer, Debbie, but thank you. Just thanks again for being here. I hope you all accept the challenge. Thank you to Jean and her group. This is a non-business organization. Let's just take some aggressive actions right here in Canyon County, set the example for the rest of the state. So thank you all. Have a great day. Thank you.